I lost no time, of course, in telling my mother all that I knew, and perhaps should have told her long before, and we saw ourselves at once in a difficult and dangerous position. Some of the man's money, if he had any, was certainly due to us, but it was not likely that our captain's shipmates, above all the two specimens seen by me, Sniffy, Black Dog, and the blind beggar. We've talked about the problematic language that Jim uses around this character. I don't think it's really acceptable to be calling him a blind beggar, but if anyone's deserving of compassion, well, I mean, he's obviously messed up, but got to be a little bit kinder to this guy. Above all the two specimens seen by me, would be inclined to give up their booty in payment of the dead man's debts. The captain's order to mount at once and ride for Dr. Livesey would have left my mother alone and unprotected. Not that she's ever cared about Jim being in that position, running the pub, while she's upstairs tending to his dying father, in fairness, as we've said. Would have left my mother alone and unprotected, which was not to be thought of. Conscientious boy, Jim. Indeed, it seemed impossible for either of us to remain much longer in the house. The fall of the coals in the kitchen grate, the very ticking of the clock, filled us with alarms. That was meant to be the noise of falling coals in the grate. Filled us with alarms. The neighbourhood to our ears seemed haunted by approaching footsteps, and what between the dead body of the captain on the parlour floor, they've not moved him. What are they doing then? Oh my God. Oh, he's dead. Oh, that's because remember, he's just died, Billy Bones, of apoplexy, just in the last chapter. So he's just gone, oh, Jesus, Jim. Boomf. And they've gone, oh, I'm all nervous now. You would be. There's a dead bloke in the middle of the pub. What between the dead body of the captain on the parlour floor and the thought of that detestable blind beggar? I'll tell you something. Jim's a Tory. I've said it. I'm not saying there's not Tories who could be fantastic adventure heroes. But to be honest, I mean, loads of them. There's always, especially in books like this, it's always like, come on, me hearties, come on. Oh, people should stop scrounging off the state. Whoa, you find it all over them. All over this sort of material. Obviously, detestable blind beggar. I'm not saying Tories call homeless people detestable blind beggars. But they do. In the heads. Stop me, government. You have done. No, I'm not. I'm nothing. I'm nothing. Without the thought of that detestable blind beggar hovering near at hand and ready to return, there were moments when, as the saying goes, I jumped in my skin for terror. Something must speedily be resolved upon, and it occurred to us at last to go forth together and seek help in the neighbouring hamlet. A little town. Not Hamlet from Shakespeare. Get off me. Sorry, we were looking for help. No sooner said than done. Bareheaded as we were, because if you went out without your hat in them days, you were a scrubber. Those are the actual words that they would have used. Bareheaded as we were, we ran out at once in the gathering evening in the frosty fog. The hamlet lay not many 100 yards away, though out of view, on the other side of the next cove. And there's a lot of coves where they live, aren't there? We've had Black Hill Cove. Is that right? Black Hill Cove, Black Mountain Cove, Black Field Cove. Plenty of coves. What are these coves? I've got pubs on them. Hamlets and coves. It's the olden days. And what greatly encouraged me, it was in an opposite direction from whence the blind man had made his appearance. He's got it in for this blind man as Jim. He really has. And whither he had presumably returned. We were not many minutes on the road, though we sometimes stopped to lay hold of each other and hearken. Can you hear him? we're doomed. Remember John Laurie from Laurie from Dad's Army is the blind beggar, Jim. But there was no unusual sound, nothing but the low wash of the ripple and the croaking of the inmates of the wood. I assume he means frogs there. Not loads of prisoners just sat in the wood going, croaking. Oh, bust out of jail, eh, we? Oh. It was already candlelight when we reached the hamlet. And there's a lot of old... be under no illusion that this is happening in the olden days. It was candlelight before we reached the hamlet. Coming from the cove? All right. And I shall never forget how much I was cheered to see the yellow shine in doors and windows. But that, as it proved... Windows? That's not acceptable. Windows. My mother raised me better than to say windows. But that, as it was proved, was the best of the help we were likely to get in that quarter. For you would have thought men would have been ashamed of themselves. No soul would consent to return with us to the Admiral Benbow. Cowards. The more we told of our troubles, the more, man, woman and child, they clung to the shelter of their house. Ziz. The name of Captain Flint. That'll be important. The name of Captain Flint, though it was strange to me, was well enough known to some there and carried a great weight of terror. Some of the men who had been to field work on the far side of the Admiral Benbow remembered, besides, to have seen several strangers on the road, and taking them to be smugglers, to have bolted away. And one at least had seen a little lugger, a little kind of boat, in what we called Kit's Hole. For that matter, anyone who was a comrade of the captain's was enough to frighten them to death. And the comrade of the captain's sounds like Billy Bones was a member of the Labour Party. A lot of politics this chapter. And we don't want to get into all that. We got plenty of that at the moment. You're going to get on BBC News for all that game. Oh. The left-wing, right-wing press. Silly. Anyway. What I'm saying is it's silly to think any of this thing about BBC News being biased. Everyone thinks it's biased. Why? Because it ain't. Probably. I don't know. I don't know enough. I just read about pirates, man. Online. For free. For that matter, anyone who was a comrade of the captain's was enough to frighten them to death. And the short and the long of the matter was that while we could get several who were willing enough to ride to Dr. Livesey's, which lay in another direction, not one would help us to defend the inn. They say cowardice is infectious, but then argument is, on the other hand, a great emboldener. And so when each had his say, my mother made them a speech. She's gay. She's coming back to life now. Jim's mum. Pirates are better than politics any day, says Green Tea 24680. I quite agree. I think there's quite a few buccaneers in the House of Commons, if you know what I mean. Privateers there would be, because they'd be under the employ of the state, and that did used to go on. There's one of them buried in St. Peter's in Wolverhampton, a privateer under a letter of marque. Raiding foreign ships, plundering them for the crown. That's privateering, not buccaneering. It's been a long week. The R's have it. Very well. Very well, very well said. 50p. So his mum's making a speech now. They're all like this. I can't come. Well, they're coming at 10 o'clock. They've said 10 o'clock tonight they're going to come. Yeah. Where is it again? Admiral Benbow. The one where Billy Bones live, yeah. How is he? Well, he's dead. Is he? Well, I might go in then next weekend. Well, you can come in tonight because actually we need someone because his mates are going to... Oh, yeah. Well, I would have done. But I've got to clean me candle I've got to trim me candle wicks. Something old worldy like that. I've got to trim me candle. I've got to trim me tallow. Something like that. And his mum's there like that. Listening to him like that. And they're finished and she's like that. And then she goes, she would not, she declared, lose money that belonged to a fatherless boy. If none of the rest of you dare, she said. Jim and I dare. Back we will go. We was she Yoda. Back we will go. We're not doing a Yoda voice, come on. Back we will go. I'll try and make that sound less Yodery. Back we will go. The way we came. And small thanks to you big hulking chicken-hearted men. Too bloody right, my friend. We'll have that chest open if we die for it. And I'll thank you for that bag, Mrs. Crossley. Mrs. Crossley like that. Looking at the floor. Thank you for that bag, Mrs. Crossley. Because Mrs. Crossley's been like, I can't come, but you can have a bag if you want. I'm just chucking them out. Oh, I'll have that bag, Mrs. Crossley. To bring back our lawful money in. She's. I mean, I'm glad she's chipping in, but I am a bit worried about her because she's gone through a lot and now she's acting all, I just don't want her to get hurt because she's feeling reckless. Of course, I said I would go with my mother, and of course, they all cried out at our foolhardiness. Don't go. Well, come and help us. Don't go. But even then, not a man would go along with us. All they were typical men. All they would do was to give me a loaded pistol lest we were attacked. Do you know what I mean? Again, this is a bit libertarian, this is a bit right-wing. Well, we won't help, but we'll give you the tools to help yourself. I think we know what colour this borough went on the election map. All they did was give me a loaded pistol lest we were attacked and to promise to have horses ready saddled in case we were pursued on our return. This is definitely our government now. While one lad was to ride forward to the doctors in search of armed assistance. Who've they sent in for the daily briefing today? My heart was beating finely when we two set forth in the cold night upon this dangerous venture. A full moon was beginning to rise and peered redly through the upper edges of the fog. Spooky this. And this increased our haste, for it was plain, before we came forth again, that all would be as bright as day and our departure exposed to the eyes of any watchers. We slipped along the hedges, noiseless and swift. Nor did we see or hear anything to increase our terrors, till, to our relief, the door of the Admiral Benbow had closed behind us. Burped again there. Well, as I said, I have had quite a big Chinese. I slipped the bolt at once, and we stood and panted for a moment in the dark, alone in the house with the dead captain's body still there. Then my mother got a candle in the bar, and holding each other's hands, we advanced into the parlour. He lay as we had left him, on his back, with his eyes open, and one arm stretched out. Draw down the blind, Jim. I've made his mum quite sassy now because she just sassed Mrs. Crossley. But I assume she must sound quite similar to him because they're all from Black Hill Cove, Bristol, aren't they? Draw down the blind, Jim, whispered my mother. They might come and watch outside. And now, said she, when I had done so, we have to get the key off that. And who's to touch it? Not even closed his eyes, says Bauble Rob in reference to poor old dead Billy Bones. I know. He got all flies around him. Oh, I forgot about him. We'll move him eventually. Things were different in them days. And now, said she, when I had done so, we have to get the key off that, and who's to touch it, I should like to know. And she gave a kind of sob as she said the words. I went down on my knees at once. On the floor, close to his hand, there was a little round of paper, blackened on the one side. I could not doubt that this was the black spot. Now, remember he said, didn't he, the black spot? It was like, you're in for it, mate. Sign. The black spot. The black spot, oh God. That's his ghost in Jim's memory. That'd be that in a TV programme. He'd be like, huh? But what? And there'd be like close up of his hand. But what? And he opens it and it's got, and he unfolds it and it's like, as he unfolds it and it's like, and he's looking at it, it's like a flashback. Talking about the black spot, Jim. That's what they give you when they're gonna come and give you a fucking duffing up like Christ, don't look at that black spots. Like that, flashback. And taking it up, I found written on the other side, in very good clear hand, this short message. You have till 10 tonight. That's what I'll be sending all of you when you come and listen to this stream. 10 tonight. All to your houses, you're like that at the front door. I'm nowhere to be seen. And it's just the URL at the bottom. 10 tonight. He had till 10, Mother, said I, and just as I said it, our old clock began striking. Dong, ding, dong, dong. I don't know if there would have been Westminster chimes back in them days, but that's the clock that was in the front room at my granddad's that went bong, ding, dong, dong. Slightly off key, is that the right term? Hung, hing, hung, hung. Hung, hing, hing, hung. So wind it with an Allen key to stop it doing that. Hung, hung, hung. The clock began striking. The sudden noise startled us shockingly. But the good news was, it was only 6. Now, Jim, she said, that key. I felt in his pockets, one after another. Poor Jim. Mate, he was having to go through this corpse's pockets to get these keys out. Clink, clink, clink. This little kid, man. He's what, 6 or something, did we say? A few small coins, a thimble, and some thread and big needles. It's ironic considering the state of his clothes. It was just, mind you, he did the patchwork himself on his own jacket, didn't he? So that's why he's got thread and needle on him. A piece of pigtail tobacco bitten away at the end. Oh, that's old school twist tobacco, like they used to chew, like a long sort of fuse, and they cut a bit off the end. And pigtail tobacco. Well, I think they smoked it. They smoked it or chewed it. No, bitten away at the end. Like that. Used to do that in the Black Country till like the 60s. Like spittoons in the pubs. Hello, Bill. And his gully with a crooked handle, knife. A pocket compass, pirate. And a tinderbox. Like a little thing to light is it's quite a good little cross section of an 18th century sailor's pockets. This little box to light his pipe or light a cheroot, a fag, whatever they smoked back in them days. And I began to despair. Perhaps it's round his neck, suggested my mother. Overcoming a strong repugnance. This kid is 6, and his mum's having him rifle a corpse. Oh, I'm so sorry, son. Try his neck. Try round his neck. No? Try his pockets again. Keep trying them. Overcoming a strong repugnance. Don't you think so? I tore open his shirt at the neck. And there, sure enough, hanging to a bit of tarry string, which I cut with his own gully knife, we found the key. At this triumph, we were filled with hope and hurried upstairs without delay to the little room where he had slept so long and where his box had stood since the day of his arrival. It was like any other seaman's chest on the outside. The initial B for belly burned on the top of it with a hot iron, and the corners somewhat smashed and broken as by long rough usage. Give me the key, said my mother. Well, she wants it now, when she can get at the money box. When it was stuck round the neck of a dead old pirate, she wasn't so keen. Get the kid to do it. Give me the key, said my mother, and though the lock was very stiff, she'd turned it and thrown back the lid in a twinkling. A strong smell of tobacco and tar rose from the interior, but nothing was to be seen on the top except a suit of very good clothes, carefully brushed and folded. That is creepy. They had never been worn, my mother said. That's really creepy. Under that, the miscellany. The miscellany began. A quadrant. Even I don't know what that is. Some sort of measuring thing for a map. A quadrant. A set square. Was never very good at maths. A quadrant. A tin cannikin. A little tin can. Little tin, like a little tin tobacco box, I guess. Several sticks of tobacco. He likes his tobacco. 2 brace of very handsome pistols. I should say so. Quadrant, used for ship's navigation. Thank you very much, Minislot 1997. Quadrant, used for ship's navigation. That's what's in there. 2 brace of very handsome pistols. A piece of bar silver. He's loaded, this boy. Bar silver in the middle of the 18th century. An old Spanish watch. I bet that'd be worth a few doubloons as well. And some other trinkets of little value and mostly of foreign make. Jim, come on. A pair of compasses mounted with brass and 5 or 6 curious West Indian shells. It's quite sweet in a way. It's quite sad, isn't it? That he's kept them. I've often wondered since why he should have carried about these shells with him in his wandering, guilty and hunted life. I know, he is complicated, Billy Bones. In the meantime, the captain. In the meantime, we had found nothing of any value but the silver and the trinkets, and neither of these were in our way. Underneath there was an old boat cloak, whitened with sea salt on many a harbour bar. My mother pulled it up with impatience, and there lay before us the last things in the chest. A bundle tied up in oilcloth and looking like papers, and a canvas bag that gave forth, at a touch, the jingle of gold. "I'll show these rogues that I'm an honest woman," said my mother, after I've got me kid running the bar and rifling through a corpse for me to find a key to a strong box. "I'll show these that I'm an honest woman. I'll have my dues and not a farthing over. Hold Mrs. Crossley's bag." Mrs. Crossley. Her name's mud in this pub. "Hold Mrs. Crossley's bag." She's in there laughing at him. Oh, yeah, cheers, Mrs. Crossley, all the help you were. And she began to count over the amount of the captain's score from the sailor's bag into the one that I was holding. So she's been like, right, he's paying his rent. Because he hadn't paid it for about 3 months because he's too busy walking around singing and waving a cutlass. It was a long, difficult business, for the coins were all of countries and sizes, doubloons and louis d'ors and guineas and pieces of 8, and I know not what besides, all shaken together at random. So that's all just obviously different currencies from around the Spanish Main. We're looking at France. We're looking at the Spanish Empire. We're looking at the coinage of the East India Company. We're looking at the King's Golden Guineas, all that sort of thing. I know not what besides, all shaken together at random. The guineas too were about the scarcest, most valuable, and it was with these only that my mother knew how to make account, because they're good British coins, good British guineas. When we were about halfway through, I suddenly put my hand upon her arm, for I had heard, in the silent, frosty air, a sound that brought my heart into my mouth. The tapping of the blind man's stick upon the frozen road. He's like that. Count that up now. How much is that? Oh God, £4.50 we're on now. How much does he owe? 78 quid. Jesus Christ. Keep counting. Hang on. Coming up the road. It drew nearer and nearer while we sat holding our breath. Then it struck sharp upon the inn door. Bam! And then we could hear the handle being turned. And the bolt rattling. As the wretched being, come on, Jim, tried to enter. And then there was a long time of silence, both within and without. At last the tapping recommenced. And to our indescribable joy and gratitude, died slowly away again. Ruined the drama there, didn't I? Died slowly away again, until it ceased to be heard. "Mother," said I, "take the whole and let's be going." For I was sure the bolted door must have seemed suspicious, and would bring the whole hornet's nest about our ears. Though how thankful I was that I had bolted it, none could tell who had never met that terrible blind man. He will not stop going in on this man, or mentioning his visual impairment. But my mother, frightened as she was, would not consent to take a fraction more than was due to her. She's really sort of displaying all the signs of sort of grief and stress, isn't she? Because she's been really like, no, we've got to do it like this. We've got to go. Mum, honestly, he's obviously a pirate. Just say, I'm not taking more than 1 pence more than what's owed me. I'm not doing it. Come on, we got to go here, Mum. It's very well observed. By Robert Louis Stevenson, not by me making that comment. Imagine if I just said that in between reading things. Very well observed. Cheers, George. No worries, George. She was obstinately unwilling to be content with less. Well, yeah. It was not yet 7, she said, by a long way. She knew her rights, and she would have 'em. And she was still arguing with me when a little low whistle sounded a good way off upon the hill. That was enough, and more than enough for both of us. That is scary. You like that? Bum, 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 bum on the door. Going away. Oh, right, keep counting that. Keep counting them coins. That's actually a bit that's like Twin Peaks, that. Like Laura Palmer's theme. Am I going to get done for copyright? Nah. Parody law, isn't it? I hope. That was enough, and more than enough, for both of us. I'll take what I have, she said, jumping to her feet. And I'll take this to square the count, I said, picking up the oilskin packet. Do you hear that motorbike then? My heart was in my mouth. Next moment we were both groping downstairs, leaving the candle by the empty chest. And the next we had opened the door and were in full retreat. We had not started a moment too soon. The fog was rapidly dispersing. Already the moon shone quite clear on the high ground on either side, and it was only in the exact bottom of the dell and round the tavern door that a thin veil still hung unbroken to conceal the first steps of our escape. Far less than halfway to the hamlet, very little beyond the bottom of the hill, we must come forth into the moonlight. I should say must can be used in the past tense, and he's doing it here. Nor was this all, for the sound of several footsteps running came already to our ears. And as we looked back in their direction, a light, tossing to and fro, still rapidly advancing, showed that one of the newcomers carried a lantern. "My dear," said my mother suddenly, "take the money and run on. I'm going to faint." This was certainly the end for both of us, I thought. How I cursed the cowardice of the neighbours. How I blamed my poor mother for her honesty and her greed, for her past foolhardiness and present weakness. We were just at the little bridge by good fortune, and I helped her, tottering as she was, to the edge of the bank, where, sure enough, she gave a sigh, "Oh," and fell on my shoulder. I do not know how I found the strength to do it at all, and I'm afraid it was roughly done. I'm afraid it was roughly done like that. Dragging her. Like that. But I managed to drag her down the bank and a little way under the arch. Farther I could not move her, for the bridge was too low to let me do more than crawl below it. So there we had to stay, my mother almost entirely exposed, and both of us within earshot of the inn. End of chapter. So, the walls are closing in on Jim and Mrs. Hawkins. These lads are coming to exact their vengeance. They're coming to take what they deserve, according to them, from Billy Bones' chest. But they've made off with a load of his doubloons and guineas and an oilskin cloth containing what looked like papers. What could it be? What have they had? What are them lads going to make of it when they show up at 10 o'clock sharp at that inn? Join in tomorrow, 10 p.m, to find out. Any questions? Any discussion? Understandable if not. It's Friday night. You want to get back to your lives. Not that any of us have them. Now? What are we all thinking? Tomorrow's or Mon? Oh, you're quite right. It's Mon. It's Mon, not Tomorrow's. It's Mon. No, Saturday and Sunday we've got off.